Welcome back to the program. This is April Kelly. Today we are joined by Dr. Ella Corrick, who is an MD, PhD. She runs our doctoral degree program. Ella, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me again, Abra. Nice to be here.
You're speaking at the MiM, so tell us what you'll be discussing.
So we're having a platform to discuss AI in research and education and kind of taking the format of a debate, and I'm very much forming the anti-AI arm of that conversation.
So you're the third person on this discussion that I've talked to. So I've talked to two who will be in this quorum that you're going to have a chat with about AI. The other two, there's one mixed and there's one for, and so I'm taking it you're against.
Yeah.
So tell us why AI is bad.
So to be upfront, I'm not saying there are no valid or valuable uses of AI. You know, we've all been using AI for years, longer. Whenever I use Google Maps to estimate a route for me to get somewhere, that's using AI to work out that route for me. So I recognize AI has roles to play in specific tools within our life. I accept that. What I'm speaking about is the very serious reservations I have about people who I feel are maybe too wholeheartedly embracing AI to replace human elements of research and education. And I think that when we start replacing creative or information synthesizing or teaching roles that have previously been played by humans, and we try and replace those with LLM, generative AI, or in some cases, machine learning AI, I think that there are some real harms in terms of the quality. I think that we lose something in human connection. And then as a background to all of this, there are massive ethical issues with all of the big commercial AI available.
I agree with you partially. Partially, I agree with having access, and so I have no cat in this fight because I'm not in that discussion that you're going to have. I use AI, but here's and before you completely shut me off with this thing. Everything I just assume everything coming out of the mouth of Claude or Chat is bollocks, and when I look at it, and I often get bollocks, and when we first had access to these LLMs, I would say, hey, I need published research on this. And 99% of the studies that they came up with were bollocks. I would look on PubMed for a study and it was absolutely trite. And it's been a few months since either one of the LLMs that I use has come up with hallucinations, I think is the word. So they're now making sure that everything that they're giving me is linked to PubMed.
So you probably have trained your program that if it's producing a link, that you want a link that actually links to something real within the internet. But hallucinations are more or less an integral function of an LLM, because what we have to remember is it's not artificial intelligence in the sense that anything is thinking. They're word prediction machines. It's like predictive text on your phone at a higher level. All it's doing is guessing what the most likely next word is, and they haven't built in a way of it working out when it should say, I don't know, because that requires thought. So it is never going to know to say, I don't know. So hallucinations are always going to be a hazard. And the other thing is, there's a real problem with the informational quality you get out of LLMs, especially when you're using it in an educational setting where novices are using it to gain information, because you looked at that output and you knew it was bollocks. But have you come across the term Gell-Mann amnesia?
I haven't. No, what's that?
Michael Crichton, an author, came up with
one of my favorites.
It refers to the phenomenon where you're reading a newspaper, and for you and me, you come across an article about something healthcare related, and you're like, oh my God, this journalist has no idea about anything. Like, they've just completely got this wrong because we're experts in that area. And you're like, they don't know what an MI is. They've just written complete bollocks. Then you turn the page and it's about something that's outside your wheelhouse, business, politics, whatever. And you just believe them, because Gell-Mann amnesia is where you forget that the same journalist who wrote complete nonsense about an area you're an expert in, you suddenly forget that they're not an expert in the next page either. And I think we have the same amnesia when we're reading AI output. When I read an article that, or an essay that I know someone has used AI to produce, I spot the rubbish because I'm familiar with that field. But if you're not extremely familiar with the field that you're using AI to inform you about, you will miss the bollocks. And so I think it's really harmful if people are using it for information when we know that the quality of the information it gives us is really low.
So let me propose a concept or a question to you. So the world comes to you, Ella, and makes you the benevolent dictator
Mm-hmm.
of AI.
Mm-hmm.
How would you create the AI system to supplement academia?
Well, to a large part, I would limit how we use AI within academia. So LLMs are fine as a toy. They're fine for fulfilling bureaucratic purposes where actually the human involved in writing the complaints letter or order form or whatever it is, where that human component isn't valuable. Great. So we can use it for bureaucracy, but I would restrict it so that we are not using it for anything where we're replacing human creativity or human connection. So, as an example, there's a huge debate within education at the moment about how we tackle the fact that students are going to use ChatGPT or Copilot to write their essays. And I think that we really need to address it by trying to educate students not to do that and show them that that's harmful to them. I think there's increasing evidence showing that students who use AI for these processes don't gain the skills that other students gain, which makes sense because they're not rehearsing those skills. So I don't know logistically how we stop students because it's very difficult to detect, but I would really vehemently try and persuade students that it's not in their best interests to be using it that way. And then I think using it outside of studying just to produce pieces of written work, I think has several harms. So one of them is kind of coming to the ethics. You know, the output of an LLM is to a very large degree plagiarized. We know that there is almost zero transparency in the training materials used by these models because it's all proprietary data. So they won't tell us what they're training on. But we know that they are training on copyrighted materials without giving the original authors any credit, any payment, or seeking any consent to use that work. So when we use ChatGPT to write something for us, we by proxy are plagiarizing the authors that the LLM is plagiarizing. So I think that's a really big issue. And then secondly, I think there's a whole issue that comes down more to kind of fundamental values about the importance of human connection and the fact that I'd much rather get an email from you, Abrick, and talk to you than get an email from ChatGPT.
I read an article where there was a discussion for AI coming into elementary and secondary education.
Mm-hmm.
And one side of the argument was
Mm-hmm.
the cat's out of the bag where we just can't have these students not use AI to create a critique of Jane Austen book.
Mm-hmm.
But so what she said was, we know that's going to happen. So we'll send them home. Can you please write a critique on the Iliad and then come in? We know it's bollocks because it's AI, but that's not what they're teaching. It's critical thinking. So as a class, they can have a look at this short essay on the Iliad and have a critical appraisal of that, which if I remember my growing up in the 60s and 70s, there was not a lot of critical thinking taught to elementary and junior high.
Mm-hmm.
Would this be a way forward?
Yeah, so I think that's a valuable exercise, but it all comes down to what the purpose of any exercise is. And in education, we shouldn't be setting students assignments just for habit or because we feel like there should be some output. We shouldn't be getting students to write essays because the value isn't in the essay. There's no educational value in producing 1,000 words. The educational value, as you say, is in developing knowledge acquisition skills, data synthesis skills, writing skills, and so on. So I think it depends what the purpose of a particular exercise is. In our doctorate, one of our modules is academic writing. So we need students to rehearse the skill of academic writing. If I were teaching at a primary or secondary school level, I would probably get my students to handwrite it in the classroom. And that would be the way to circumvent them using AI,
Hmm.
because just don't give them access to that tool. Yeah, they can use the tool at other times, but if I want them to develop the skill of writing an essay, they need to write an essay. On the other hand, if I want them to practice the skill of critical thinking, then I think the exercise you describe is fantastic because it applies the critical thinking to a problem they are going to face in real life, which is the problem of people using AI around them, they themselves using AI, and needing to apply critical thinking to actually analyze the output and recognize the bollocks that sometimes comes out with it.
I think the cat's out of the bag, and having people go through primary, secondary education all the way up to your doctoral program with the key skills to see bollocks, know it's bollocks, and have the critical thinking to look through that and recognize it so they know that it's AI coming at them.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. I think it's important that they are taught about it and that they get exposure to see it and that they get critical exposure. But I don't think that excuses, just saying the cat's out of the bag. I don't think that excuses just shrugging and saying, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. We'll just let everyone use AI for everything now. Because if we do that, we are going to lose certain skills. And maybe there's skills we don't need. I mean, people talk about it being the same as calculators and say, my teachers always told me I wouldn't have a calculator in my pocket every day. And I do. It's called an iPhone. So, yeah, how often do we use simple arithmetic, 3 times table, 12 times table, day to day? I mean, I probably do use it every day, but I could live without it because I do have a smartphone in my pocket. And there's probably some elements of education where you can justify that. Maybe not everybody needs to learn how to write an essay, but I would argue if you are going to give someone a diploma or a degree certificate, that means that you are accrediting that they have a certain level of skill with language, with synthesizing complicated information into a compelling narrative. I think we are saying that people have gained those skills. Copying and pasting from ChatGPT is not gaining that skill. So we need to divide, kind of comes back to what I was saying of it. We need to think about the purpose of assignments. I'm not talking about banning people from using AI as a kind of blanket ban, but I'm saying if there is a purpose of an assignment that is for you to learn how to do a particular skill, there is no point farming that skill out to someone else. It's no different to paying another student to write your essay, right? So I think, yeah, the cat's out of the bag, and therefore we need to learn how to recognize the problems with AI and maybe use it efficiently for the bureaucratic tasks where I don't think it harms anyone to use it, accepting my prior concerns about plagiarism. But I do think that we should resist this urge, which I think is primarily, frankly, driven by all of our own inherent laziness, that it's quicker to put something through ChatGPT than to apply our own brains to that problem.
I think our undergraduate program is such a hands-on requirement for the bachelor's remote paramedic. We know that they're going to be in the classroom. Even the masters of austere critical care, we see them in the classroom, and so we can assess their capabilities. That for your doctoral program, what is your approach? What do you plan to do with your PhD students?
So all of our assignments through our taught modules, every module has both a written and an oral assignment. So part of the purpose of the oral assignment is to prepare students for that really important skill of academic dissemination of information, presenting at conferences, being able to talk to people. But the other part of that is that it allows us to actually evaluate their understanding of the material that they're writing about. So if they have just used an AI to write about something and they haven't engaged their brains, then this is an opportunity for us to live, human to human, evaluate their understanding. So that's one of the kind of protective factors we have. Another one is just that, as I say, I have frank conversations with students, and I think if you're coming to postgraduate education, you're coming usually because you actually want the education. We don't have many students that I'm aware of who are there purely for a degree certificate. Most of them are there because they're genuinely passionate about the research they want to do. They want to gain the skills for a particular reason. They might be in a leadership role, or they've recognized they're in a workplace, a healthcare environment, resource limited, where if they want to see change, they have to effect change. So they're on our program because they want to gain skills. And I can say to them, look, you can plug stuff into ChatGPT. I may or I may not be able to pick up on it. Sometimes we will recognize if someone's writing style changes, they've submitted an essay with a load of bullet points, But I appreciate we mostly can't catch people using AI, but genuinely they are robbing themselves. So I think having that conversation with mature students and saying, you're here to have an opportunity to study and learn, and it's up to you whether or not you take hold of that opportunity with both hands.
Valid points. Definitely looking forward to watching this and to see the discussion that you and the other panelists will have on how academic response will be for the AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be really interesting, and it's a very lively point of conversation in all parts of education and academia just now. So I'm excited for some of that to come out at MiM.
Okay, I'll stop that.